Hi guys, and welcome to the third video of this entire series where I will be discussing Office 365 and Exchange Online concepts. In this particular video, we will be talking about custom domains in Office 365 and what DNS records will be used to add a custom domain in Office 365. If you have watched the previous session, in the last video, we discussed how you can set up Office 365 tenant. I have shown you how you can purchase licenses within your Office 365 tenant, and we discussed how you can assign those licenses to your user accounts. Now, in this particular session, we will be discussing what is a domain or what is a custom domain in Office 365, what type of DNS records we will be dealing with when we will add a domain in Office 365. And I will show you how you can add a custom domain in Office 365 tenant. And I will also show you how you can remove a domain from Office 365 tenant. Now, when we talk about a custom domain is a domain that you have purchased from a domain provider. For example, from GoDaddy or any other domain provider. If you have purchased a domain that is called a custom domain, you own that particular domain, right? And a custom domain can be added and removed within the Office 365 tenant as per your requirement. Moreover, a custom domain need some records to be published on your domain provider website. When you will be adding a domain in Office 365, Office 365 will give you certain values. For example, TXT value, MX value, and CNAME value. We will be discussing all these values one by one. Now, uh, first of all, let me tell you how a domain works in Office 365. So let's assume I have an administrator in my Office 365 tenant, and he wants to purchase a domain from a domain provider. So he will reach to one of the domain providers who are available in the market. So let's say he will reach GoDaddy. He will go to GoDaddy and he will request a domain from GoDaddy, and the domain name that he is looking for is office365concepts.com. So administrator will create an account in GoDaddy website. He will look for whether this domain is available or not. If this domain is available, then the administrator will be able to purchase that domain from GoDaddy. Now GoDaddy will become the domain provider for this particular domain. Now the administrator will go to Office 365 tenant. He will log into his Office 365 tenant and he will try to add this office365concepts.com domain in his tenant. So when administrator will try to add this domain, Office 365 will ask him to add certain values. Office 365 will give him certain values like TXT, MX, and CNAME records. And Office 365 will ask him that you need to go to your domain provider website and add these values so that you can successfully add a domain in your tenant. So administrator will go to GoDaddy and he will add these records in domain provider website. Once these records are added and once these records are published successfully, after that this domain will be added in the Office 365 tenant. And then administrator will be able to assign this domain to users for their email addresses or user principal names. So this is how a domain works in Office 365. Now, when we talk about DNS records, when you will be dealing with domains in Office 365, you will be worried about only three domains: TXT, MX, and CNAME. So let's discuss these records one by one. The first record that we are going to discuss is TXT record. TXT record is used to prove ownership of your domain. Let's say you are trying to add a domain to Office 365 tenant. So how Office 365 will come to know that whether you own this domain or not, right? Now, let's assume that you have an administrator and he has purchased a domain from GoDaddy. He requested a domain and he has purchased that domain successfully. Now that administrator is going to Office 365 and he's trying to add this domain in his Office 365 tenant. So Office 365 will ask him to prove his ownership, whether you really own this domain or not. So Office 365 will give him a TXT value. TXT record is also called text record. So text record is a value which looks like, which is similar to this. And Office 365 will give him a TXT record value that you need to prove your ownership. So what you need to do, I'm giving you this value, go to your domain provider, GoDaddy or any other domain provider, create a TXT record on your domain provider and add this value in that particular TXT record. Now, once you will add this value in your domain provider, and after that, once this value is replicated, your domain ownership is proved. So your domain will be verified in Office 365 tenant, right? So this is how TXT record works. TXT record is used to prove ownership of your domain. If you have owned a domain or if you have purchased a domain from GoDaddy or any other domain provider, Office 365 will give you a TXT value. You need to go to your domain provider website, and then you need to add that value as a TXT record on your domain provider website. Once that value is added, it will take 5 or 10 minutes. The value will be replicated globally on the internet. And once that value is replicated, your domain will be verified in Office 365. Now, the next DNS record that we are going to discuss is MX record. MX record is also called mail exchange record. Now, MX record is used to receive emails from external domains. Let's say you have an Office 365 tenant and you want to receive emails from external domains like gmail.com or yahoo.com or microsoft.com. In those scenarios, you need to add MX record value in your domain provider, right? Now let's take an example and I'll show you how MX record works. Let's say we have a user, john@gmail.com, which is on Google Mail servers, right? And he's trying to send an email to Office 365 user, and that user is Bob Ross at office365concepts.com. And this user is an Office 365 user. Now, when John at gmail.com will send an email to this user, that email will go to DNS, right? From DNS, that query will go to the domain provider, because from here, the server will come to know that this particular user is using Office 365concepts.com. So from the DNS, from the root server, this query will go to my public DNS because I have purchased this domain from this public DNS, right? So the query will go to GoDaddy. From GoDaddy, the query will find that this is the particular domain, and I have added MX record for office365concepts.com. Now, whenever you are using Office 365, this will be the value of your MX record. Let me highlight this for you. Mail.protection.outlook.com. This will be the value of every single domain if you have pointed your MX record to Office 365. I will show you all these records practically as well. I'll show you how you can add a domain and how you can publish these records. So I have added MX record for my domain in public DNS in GoDaddy. Now from there, the query will find that this is the public DNS. GoDaddy is the one from where this domain is purchased. And mail.protection.outlook.com indicates that this domain is verified on an Office 365 tenant. So the query will go to Office 365, and from Office 365, that query will go to the user. Now let's assume that I do not have MX record published. I do not have MX record added in my public DNS. So in that case, what will happen? The query will reach DNS, and after that, the query will expire here because I do not have MX record published for my organization. So this email will not be able to find the right path for the email. So the email will expire right here, and the sender will receive a bounce back or NDR that we were not able to find this particular user, right? So this is how MX record works. Now, the next record that we will be talking about is Cname record. Cname record is basically used for auto discover service. When you are configuring your Outlook, when you are using your mailbox and Outlook client, That time Autodiscover service tries to find your mailbox. So Cname record is published for Autodiscover service. The value of Cname record in Office 365 case is always autodiscover.outlook.com, right? So there are some services which rely on Autodiscover within Office 365, for example, Outlook and FreeBusy. These services rely on Autodiscover. So if you want these services to be work in your Office 365 tenant, make sure you have added a CNAME record for your domain in domain provider website, right? Now let me move to my browser and let me show you how you can add a particular domain in Office 365. So currently I am logged into my Office 365 tenant and I'm logged in with my global admin account, right? Now, whenever you will be adding or removing a domain in Office 365, make sure you are logged in with global admin account. So once you log in, you need to navigate to Admin Center. This is the Office 365 Admin Center from where you can manage your domain and your users and your billing as well. Now, while this is loading, let me show you. So this is GoDaddy website from where I have purchased my domain. The name of the domain that I have purchased is office365concepts.com. So as of now, I am under DNS management, where I can see a couple of records which are already published for my domain, right? So here we do not see a TXT record, we do not see MX record, and we do not see CNAME record, which has value autodiscover.outlook.com, because I haven't added this domain as of now in my Office 365 tenant. Now, if I switch back to my Office 365 admin center, and in order to access your domain, you need to go to settings. Under settings, you need to go to your domains. Once you will click on domains tab, it will show you the list of all the domains which are available in your Office 365 tenant. As of now, I have only my initial domain. The initial domain is 365conceptslabs.onmicrosoft.com. I can still use this domain to assign email addresses or usernames for my user accounts. But if I want to purchase another domain, I can add that domain as well. Now, this domain will be called initial domain, and the domain that I will add myself, that domain will be called custom domain, right? Now, let's assume I want to add this domain in my Office 365 tenant. So what I'll do, I will go to add domain. On add domain screen, I will type the name of my domain here, which is Office 365 concepts.com, and I'll click use this domain. Now, guess what? Office 365 will automatically connect to GoDaddy, because Office 365 will come to know that I have purchased my domain from GoDaddy. The reason is GoDaddy is a partner with Microsoft. GoDaddy is a Microsoft partner. So if you have purchased any domain from GoDaddy's, the benefit is you don't have to manually add DNS records by going to your domain provider website. If you have purchased domain from GoDaddy, Microsoft Office 365 will automatically connect to GoDaddy, and it will publish all the DNS records which are required for a successful addition of a domain. Now here it says sign in to GoDaddy. I will click on verify. I'm already logged into GoDaddy, so I believe this will not ask me to enter my credentials again. Okay, so looks like I'm already logged in. If you are not logged in, if you are not logged in to your public DNS on the same browser, then you will be asked to enter your credentials. I'm already logged in here, so that is the reason Office 365 didn't ask me for credentials. Now, here it says click connect to authorize Microsoft to enable the service domain proof of ownership for configuring Microsoft services for this domain. So what Office 365 is saying, that let Office 365 connect to GoDaddy so that Office 365 can automatically check with GoDaddy that whether you are the owner of this domain or not. So I'll click connect, and now Office 365 will communicate with GoDaddy, and it will add the necessary DNS records, the DNS records which are required to add a domain, right? Now, here you can see that it says, since GoDaddy is your DNS hosting provider, all you have to do is sign in and we will update your DNS records. I'll click on continue. So in this case, I will not have to go to my domain provider website, and I do not have to manually update all these records. Now here you can see, this is the TXT record. This is for SPF. SPF is used for mail flow. I will be discussing SPF, DKIM, and DMARC DNS records in a different session. So this is the MX record. The value is mail.protection.outlook.com, and this is my domain, office 365 concepts-com. The entire MX record value will be office 365 concepts-com.mail.protection.outlook.com. And this is the value for Cname auto-discover record, which is autodiscover.outlook.com. Now, if I click add DNS records, these DNS records should be added automatically. Now, let me check if TXT record is added here or not. I believe I need to refresh the browser, and then we will check if TXT record is added in my public DNS or not. Because if TXT record is added, then my domain ownership is proved. Okay, so here you can see TXT record, verified domain, and this is the value which is updated by Office 365 in GoDaddy under my domain, office365concepts.com. So with the help of this value, my ownership for this domain has been proved. Now the next thing what Office 365 will do, Office 365 will add all these three DNS records automatically, right? So I will click on, okay, let me check this as well. I'll click on add DNS records. Now Office 365 will again connect to GoDaddy, and these records will be added as well. Let's wait for a few seconds. So here it says click connect to authorize Microsoft to enable the service Microsoft Office 365 for this domain. I'll click connect. And now Office 365 is adding these three DNS records in my domain provider in GoDaddy, and it should be complete now. Okay, so it says domain setup is complete. Office 365 concepts.com is all set up, and you can now view and manage it from your domain list. Click on done. And if I refresh this page, now I should see all my DNS records published here. Now, if I go to my admin center and if I go to my domains, now I should see two domains here. One initial domain, which ends with .onmicrosoft.com, and the other one is the domain that I just added. Now, okay. All right, so here you can see the records are added. This is the MX record, Office 365 concepts-com.mail.protection.outlook.com. And this is the SPF record, which is added for my domain. The Cname record is here for autodiscover, autodiscover.outlook.com. And we have discussed the TXT record as well, which proves the ownership of your domain. Should be right here. Okay, so this one is not showing here. Maybe the list is not completed. Okay, So now my domain is verified and is added properly. Now, if I go to my users and if I create a new user, I will be able to assign this domain for their email addresses or their user principal names. Now, for example, now I'm creating a user, and if I go to domains, here I can see both domains now. This is my initial domain, and this is the new domain that I have just added in my tenant. So if I create a new user, let's say user A, so I can give him an email address or a user principal name like user A at office365concepts.com. So this type of domain that you add yourself in your tenant, the domain that you have purchased from a domain provider, this type of domain is called custom domain. The domain that you get from Office 365 when you set up Office 365 tenant, that type of domains are called initial domains, right? Now, let me show you how you can remove a domain from your Office 365 tenant. Now, remember that the initial domain that you receive from Office 365 while you are setting up an Office 365 tenant, you cannot remove or you cannot modify initial domain, but you can remove the custom domains. Now, let's assume that I want to remove this domain. I'll click on this domain, and then I'll go to remove domain. When you will click on remove domain, here you can select the new default domain that you want to set up for your organization, because now you are removing the custom domain, and this domain will be used for your users to assign email addresses. Now I'll click on update and continue. Okay, let me make some changes here first. Let's go to domains and let me change the default domain type. Okay, so this is the default now. And let me try to remove this domain again and click on remove domain. So now Office 365 is trying to remove this domain from my organization, from my Office 365 tenant, and looks like it is removed. Okay, so it is removed now, and now I can see only one domain, which is my initial domain. So this is how you can add and remove a domain from your Office 365 tenant. So now we have discussed what is a domain in Office 365. What are the DNS records that you will be dealing with when you are adding a domain in Office 365. We discussed how you can add a custom domain in Office 365 and how you can remove a custom domain from Office 365 tenant. In the next session, I will be discussing what admin roles are available within Office 365 tenant and what all permissions are integrated within those roles and how you can assign those roles to your user accounts, right? So if you have learned something new from this particular video, please write in comments and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your time, guys. Take care.